You're listening to Business English Pod, the business English podcast for professionals on the move. Welcome back to Business English Pod. Today's episode is the first in a two-part series that follows job applicant William Chow through his first interview at an international bank. In this show, you'll learn how to deal with some typical first interview questions. Along the way, you'll also practice some great new vocabulary and useful phrases. We'll listen as William gets interviewed for a position in the Business Development Department of the main Hong Kong branch of Mercantile International. Mike Warner, an HR manager, is conducting the interview. You'll notice that William's answers are well prepared using careful language with detailed descriptions of his achievements. Obviously, it's important to prepare for important interviews, and William certainly has done his homework. Before we listen to the dialogue, make a note of these questions and then go to our website at www.businessenglishpod.com to check your answers. 1. How is the traffic today? 2. How long has William been working at his current job? 3. What kind of business does he mainly handle? 4. How does William describe his personality? And 5. What does William mean by a participatory and situational leadership style?
Mr. Warner will see you now, Mr. Chow. Let me show you in.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Mr. Barnes.
It's William, right? Just call me Mike. Have any trouble finding us?
No, thanks. But the traffic was bad.
Atrocious, isn't it? You're right on time, though. That's good. Have a seat. Okay, well, shall we get started?
All right.
Let's start off with just a general question about your background. Can you tell me a little about yourself?
Yes. Since graduating with honors in economics from the University of Hong Kong, that was in 1996, I've been working for 10 years at First United Trust at the Admiralty branch, first as a loan officer, and for the past 3 years as an assistant branch manager.
Okay. And what are your main responsibilities at First United?
I've been mainly responsible for handling revolving credit for over 100 local and expat customers, and overseeing a portfolio of $400 million in new short and long-term fixed asset loans for individuals and for small businesses.
That's great. Maybe you could also tell me something about the way you manage people. What's your management style?
Let's see. I'd say my management style is participatory and situational. By that I mean that my style adapts to what each situation requires, but I always place great emphasis on participation from my team. As for my personal characteristics, I thrive on challenge. I work well under pressure, and I would describe myself as detail-oriented and proactive.
Interesting. Those are always good qualities to bring to the job. You said that your management style was participatory and situational. Could you give an example of that?
Let's see. Let me think about that. Okay. We were installing a major client CRM system, which was behind schedule. I had to enlist and integrate the support of my team to ensure the project was finished on time. I called a meeting with all 7 team members, described the project status, and asked for recommendations for getting the project back on schedule. And several excellent ideas were proposed. The team decided on the best course of action, and the result was that we successfully delivered the project on time. This is a good example of my participatory leadership style. I try to use influence rather than authority to lead.
So, how do you think William is doing so far? Is he going to get the job? Okay, now let's go through the dialogue together. After the receptionist shows William into Mike's office, what happens next?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Mr. Barnes.
It's William, right? Just call me Mike. Have any trouble finding us?
No, thanks. But the traffic was bad.
Atrocious, isn't it? You're right on time, though. That's good. Have a seat. Okay, well, shall we get started?
Mike is trying to make William feel more comfortable by making small talk. First, he asks William to call him by his first name. Then, he asks if William had any trouble finding their office. Have any trouble finding us? Is a typical icebreaker, that is, warm-up question for an interview. Notice that Mike leaves out the auxiliary verb did. Instead of saying, "Did you have any trouble?" he just says, "Have any trouble?" Leaving off the auxiliary verb in this way usually occurs in slightly more informal or casual settings. So this is a further signal from Mike to William to relax. What are some other small talk questions that Mike could have asked William?
How's the weather out there today?
Did you catch the game last night between Chelsea and Porto? Fantastic, wasn't it?
Would you like something to drink before we begin? A glass of water, perhaps?
As the small talk continues, William says that the traffic was bad, and Mike responds, "Yes, atrocious, isn't it?" Atrocious means extremely bad. Now, what's the first question that Mike asks William?
Let's start off with just a general question about your background. Can you tell me a little about yourself?
As you know, this is a typical kind of first interview question, one that you're almost always going to hear many times during your career. It's called an open-ended question because there's no structure given by the interviewer. Presumably, you could talk about almost anything. Don't fall into the trap, however, of making a long, rambling reply. To ramble means to talk at great length with no clear point. Instead, you should be prepared for this question and have a clear structure in mind for your response, especially when you have to interview in English. First, briefly summarize your current responsibilities, work experience, and, if relevant, your education, professional certifications, and so on. Next, you should say something about your management style if you're applying for a management position. Finally, briefly summarize your personal characteristics with strong, vivid language. But the whole thing should take you under a minute. Let's listen to William's response to see how he does.
Yes. Since graduating with honors in economics from the University of Hong Kong, that was in 1996, I've been working for 10 years at First United Trust at the Admiralty branch, first as a loan officer, and for the past 3 years as an assistant branch manager.
So far, so good. Since graduating from college, William has worked at the same company. Note how he uses a specific number, 10 years, to call attention to this achievement, which is certainly a strong point in his application. Using specific numbers where possible is called quantifying your achievements. Next, Mike jumps in to guide William's response.
Okay. And what are your main responsibilities at First United?
I've been mainly responsible for handling revolving credit for over 100 local and expat customers, and overseeing a portfolio of $400 million in new short and long-term fixed asset loans.
Again, William is careful to quantify his achievements. He is handling revolving credit for over 100 local and expat customers. Expat is short for expatriate, This refers to someone who lives and works outside their own country. Well then, what is revolving credit? This is a line of credit usually used for operating purposes, changing each month depending on the customer's current cash flow needs. Credit cards operate on the revolving credit principle. Notice the verb-noun collocation. William handles revolving credit. Studying and using collocations can help make your English sound more natural and more fluent. What other bank product is William responsible for? He is overseeing a portfolio of 400 million Hong Kong dollars. That's another good collocation, to oversee a portfolio. A portfolio is a group of financial assets. An asset is anything that is worth money. The portfolio consists of short and long-term fixed asset loans. A fixed asset refers to an asset or property that cannot be easily turned into cash, such as a building, a factory, industrial machinery, and so on. So, a fixed asset loan is money that is lent to buy a fixed asset. The key is that the loan is secured or guaranteed by the fixed asset that you are buying. If you cannot pay the loan, they take your fixed asset. What phrase did William use to describe his responsibilities? He said, "I'm mainly responsible for." What are some other ways you can use to describe your responsibilities?
My main duties include overseeing closing the accounts at the end of the month and assisting in budgetary planning.
I'm mainly in charge of coordinating the efforts of the marketing and sales departments to ensure a successful product release.
In addition to my financial responsibilities, I take care of organizing regular interdepartmental review meetings.
So far, William has talked about his work history and his current responsibilities. What's next? Mike steps in again.
What's your management style?
Let's see. I'd say my management style is participatory and situational. By that I mean that my style adapts to what each situation requires, but I always place great emphasis on participation from my team.
Participatory and situational are good vocabulary words. Both of them are buzzwords, that is, popular terms in management today. William makes it pretty clear what he means by them, doesn't he? He says, "By that I mean," and "I always place great emphasis on." Explaining your terms is very important in an interview. It helps you control the impression your words have. Let's practice some more ways to clarify your terms.
In my management philosophy, I'm a risk taker. What I mean by that is that I am willing to try new things and think in new ways.
I definitely think it's good to create a team of people who are self-starters. What I'm saying is that as a manager, you should welcome people who are motivated, who have ideas, and who work well independently.
Next, William describes some of his personal characteristics. The last major point we said you should cover when you're asked an open-ended question about your background.
As for my personal characteristics, I thrive on challenge. I work well under pressure, and I would describe myself as detail-oriented and proactive.
These are some more buzzwords that should go directly into your vocabulary notebook. For complete definitions of their meanings, you can refer to the review exercises in the study notes. which you'll find by going to the Business English Pod website. Next, Mike asked William to give a specific example of his management style. How does William respond?
Let's see. Let me think about that. Okay. We were installing a major client CRM system, which was behind schedule.
Notice how William says, let's see. Let me think about that, to give himself some time to think about an answer. Giving yourself time to think is important in an interview, where you have to speak off the cuff, that is, without a script, and think on your feet, that is, very quickly. What are some more types of phrases that you can use to buy yourself some time?
That's a good question. Just bear with me for a second.
Great question. Give me a second to think about that. All right.
Uh-huh. So you're asking about a time when I had to deal with conflict. Is that right? Interesting question. Well, let me see.
In the example William chooses to give of his participatory management style, he discusses a time when he was installing a major CRM system. What does CRM stand for? Customer Relationship Management. This refers to all aspects of interaction a company has with a customer, whether sales or service related. A CRM system usually involves special methods, software, and usually the internet to help manage customer relationships in an organized way. Williams says that the project was behind schedule. How does he say he dealt with that problem? He had to enlist and integrate the support of his team. Enlist literally means to recruit into the army. But here, it describes engaging the help of his team. To integrate means to bring together several things and blend them into one. This is a very strong verb that emphasizes Williams' participatory management style. Finally, listen again to how William finishes up his story.
This is a good example of my participatory leadership style. I try to use influence rather than authority to lead.
Summarizing your response to an interview question gives a strong impression of structure and orderliness of thought. This is an excellent technique to practice. What are some other ways to summarize your ideas?
In a nutshell, I think this story really illustrates my strong ability to prioritize tasks.
In one word, taking the initiative has led me to success again and again in my career, as I think this story illustrates.
To sum up, much more important than how you deal with easy jobs and harmony is how you manage challenges and conflict. My experience demonstrates a proven track record in coping with challenges and resolving conflict.
Make sure to take note of the many good collocations here. Illustrates my ability. Taking the initiative. Managing conflict. Demonstrates a proven track record. Resolving conflict. Great. That's just about all for today's episode. You've practiced how to respond to a common type of interview question, and you've learned some useful phrases for defining your terms, giving yourself time to think, and summarizing your experience. In addition, you've covered a lot of great vocabulary for describing your personal characteristics. Be sure to visit our website at www.businessenglishpod.com to take a look at the learner's notes for this and other episodes. We'll see you again for the second episode in this two-part series on first interviews. In Part 2, you'll learn more useful language and practice dealing with other types of common questions. In the meantime, stay well and take care. Thanks for listening. Want to get more out of Business English Pod? Then go to www.businessenglishpod.com and sign up as a premium member. Premium members can access detailed study notes and the new Phrasecast to practice all the useful language we featured today. You're listening to Business English Pod, the Business English podcast for professionals on the move. Welcome back to the second in our two-part series on first-round interviews. We'll be looking at how to respond to common interview questions, and you'll also learn some useful phrases and vocabulary. As you'll remember from the first episode, Mike Warner is interviewing William Chow for a job at the Hong Kong head office of First Mercantile International, a global bank. When we left off last time, William had just finished telling Mike about his work history, management style, and personal characteristics. Our HR manager, Mike, continues the interview with another very common first-round question. Let's see what it is and think about how you would answer this question. Just before we hear the dialogue, here are today's listening comprehension questions. Make a note of these, and you can check your answers on the website. 1. What is William's proudest achievement? 2. What is William's greatest strength? 3. What does William say is his greatest weakness? 4. Is William happy at his current job? And 5. Is William very concerned about compensation?
Okay, William, tell me about your proudest achievement.
When I took over as assistant manager in 2004, we had a non-performing loan rate of 5% on short-term loans and revolving credit due to problems with credit controls.
That sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, obviously there were some problems there. So, to find out where the weaknesses were, I worked with my team and the credit department to determine whether the issue was structural or down to a lack of controls.
And you determined it was lack of controls?
Yes, mainly.
How'd you go about fixing it?
Well, I was able to leverage my local cultural knowledge to find several previously unidentified risk factors that correlated strongly with the non-performers. After analysis, I reduced exposure to high-risk segments, especially real estate. And after that, we also modified due diligence procedures to take into account this new information.
Sounds like you really focused in on the problem. What were the results?
Let's see. In 2005, my team and I dealt with a total of $200 million in credit and loans. But I am proud to say that the non-performing rate was only 0.3%. That's a mere fraction of the rate for the previous year. This has added up to an estimated savings to the bank of $20 million over the next 3 years. Did I give you the level of detail you were looking for, or would you like to hear another example?
No, that's fine, thank you. Let's move on to another question. So, what would you say are your greatest strengths and weaknesses?
One of my strengths is my ability to be flexible in my perspective, my flexibility in analyzing new ideas and concepts. Over the past 7 years, I've seen First United go through several restructurings, with changes in leadership and management too. I've had to adjust my style to the new environments, but I've always succeeded in adapting.
Flexibility is always appreciated. And what about your weaknesses?
I think I mentioned before that I enjoy challenges and work well under pressure. I really enjoy my work. The downside to this is that sometimes I put in too much time. But by being aware of my tendency to overwork, I've learned to pace myself more and work less overtime.
That's a hard thing to do in this business. Now, can I ask you why you want to leave your current position?
Well, I've set some goals for myself and for my career, and unfortunately, there's no room for me to move forward at First United. I have begun to explore the options available before I spend too much time in a job where I can't advance. My goal is to continue to grow and improve myself so that I can be a stronger performer and contender in the workplace.
Good. We always appreciate someone who is looking for more challenges. And what are your salary expectations?
Well, let's see. I'm sure whatever you offer will be a fair amount for a person with my qualifications. Salary is not the most important factor to me. I'm looking for opportunity.
Fair enough. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes. I'd like to ask, what is Mercantile International's plan for the next 5 years? And how does the central branch, specifically the business development side, fit in?
Let's go through the dialogue together. Mike's first question is about William's proudest achievement. When you're asked this question, you should, of course, first give the interviewer some background so that he can put your achievement in context. How does William do this?
When I took over as assistant manager in 2004, we had a non-performing loan rate of 5% on short-term loans and revolving credit due to problems with credit controls.
William tells us that when he took over his current job, the portfolio under his control had a non-performing rate of 5%. This refers to the rate of bad loans, the loans that people stop paying. Bad loans are also sometimes called non-performers. They fail to perform. William says the problem was with credit controls. That is, the set of procedures and methods that an organization uses to make sure that it does not give credit to its customers unwisely and that it collects money promptly. A 5% non-performing rate is pretty high. How does Mike react?
That sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, obviously there were some problems there. So, to find out where the weaknesses were, I worked with my team and the credit department to determine whether the issue was structural or down to a lack of controls.
At first, William didn't know whether the problem was structural. That is, a basic problem with how the bank structured its credit and loan portfolios, or down to lack of controls. Lack of controls refers to credit controls. To be down to something basically means because of. This is a way of stating the cause of a problem. What are some other ways of stating the cause?
This problem basically revolved around the issue of timing. Was it too soon or too late to lower the price?
After careful analysis, we identified the root cause as being a minute flaw in one of the tools.
In the end, the problem went back to how we managed the relationship with new customers.
In the final analysis, the issue turned on a high turnover rate in the sales department.
How does William say he solved the problem with non-performing loans?
Well, I was able to leverage my local cultural knowledge to find several previously unidentified risk factors that correlated strongly with the non-performers.
William says he was able to leverage his local cultural knowledge. A lever, or lever in British English, is a bar or a stick that is used to help lift or move something. Leverage can be a noun that refers to the actual advantage you get when you use a lever. Used as a verb, to leverage something means to use it as a lever. That is, to use it to your advantage to get a job done. This is a very useful word, very popular in business. Listen to more examples of the verb to leverage.
We've got to leverage the unique competencies we have in this team. I want to see everyone working up to their full potential.
Here at Megamart, we leverage our great size to purchase goods at a heavy discount, and then we pass the savings on to our customers.
William also says he reduced exposure to high-risk segments. A segment, in this case, means part of the loan portfolio. Exposure to risk is a useful collocation or word partnership. To expose yourself to risk means to take a risk or to leave yourself open to risk. So, when William says he reduced exposure to high-risk segments, he means that he reduced the amount of loans in risky areas of business, in this case, real estate. William mentions modifying due diligence procedures. Due diligence procedures just means your methods for satisfactorily investigating the background or risk of something. This is also called doing due diligence. Diligence is the noun form of diligent. Due, in this case, means deserved or appropriate. When he finishes answering, William wisely checks to see if his answer is sufficient.
Did I give you the level of detail you were looking for, or would you like to hear another example?
What are some other ways to check whether or not your answer is sufficient?
Does that cover what you were looking for?
Have I answered your question?
Is that answer sufficient, or would you like me to go into more detail?
I'd be happy to give you another example if you like. Many others come to mind.
Now, what is Mike's next question?
So, what would you say are your greatest strengths and weaknesses?
One of my strengths is my ability to be flexible in my perspective, my flexibility in analyzing new ideas and concepts.
William knows that flexibility in perspective is highly valued by employers in his career, international banking. So he makes a point of emphasizing it when asked about his strength. To demonstrate his flexibility, he talks about successfully adapting to changes in management and restructurings in his current job. Here, restructuring refers to reorganization, moving people around and changing the organizational chart. So far, so good. But how does William do in answering the question about his greatest weakness?
I think I mentioned before that I enjoy challenges and work well under pressure. I really enjoy my work. The downside to this is that sometimes I put in too much time. But by being aware of my tendency to overwork, I've learned to pace myself more and work less overtime.
William gives a classic good example of how to answer this very common interview question. Keep in mind that it's important to sound sincere and to demonstrate real self-knowledge. First, you should identify something in your personality or work habits that can be interpreted both as a strength and as a weakness. For example, being detail-oriented is positive, but being overly concerned with details is negative. William decided to use his tendency to overwork. Like William, first talk about the positive side of the characteristic you've identified as your weakness. For example, you can say, one advantage to this is, or the good side to this is, then briefly identify the bad side. The downside of this is, or one drawback to this is, and finally, describe how you have started to overcome your weakness. For example, William says, by being aware of my tendency to overwork, I've learned to pace myself more and work less overtime. So far, William seems to be doing well in his interview, doesn't he? How does he handle the next question?
Can I ask you why you want to leave your current position?
Well, I've set some goals for myself and for my career, and unfortunately, there is no room for me to move forward at First United. I have begun to explore the options available before I spend too much time in a job where I can't advance. My goal is to continue to grow and improve myself so that I can be a stronger performer and contender in the workplace.
One of the best ways to answer this question is just as William does. Emphasize that you're looking for bigger or different challenges. As you know, it's usually good to stay positive. Don't say anything really bad about your current company, position, or boss. William focuses on the future and uses a great phrase to describe his ambition. He says his goal is to grow so that he can be a stronger performer and contender in the workplace. The word contender comes from athletics. Contenders are fellow athletes in a competition. For example, Tiger Woods is a real contender for the greatest golfer ever. Notice contender partners with strong. William wants to be a strong contender. Now, Mike asks a very important question. What kind of salary does William expect? As you'll recall, William says that salary is not really the most important factor for him. He trusts Mike to make him an offer that matches the qualifications and experience of a candidate like him. What do you think about this answer? It could be a mistake. Remember, you may be being judged on how well you negotiate. Also, it's better to leave the topic of compensation open until you fully understand the duties of the job you'll be taking over. Try to get them to make the first offer. Listen to a better answer to this question.
I really need more information about the job before we start to discuss salary. I'd like to postpone that discussion until later. Maybe you could tell me what is budgeted for the position.
Finally, there's one more part of the dialogue to cover. Mike asks William if he has any questions. As you know, in an interview, it's very important to ask questions. By querying your potential employer, you not only learn important information, but also demonstrate your knowledge about their company and show them that you take the position seriously. William uses a type of question that's good to ask. What's the 5-year plan for your company? And how does this department fit in? How about some other common types of questions that you can ask an interviewer?
How important does upper management consider the function of this position?
Could you give me an overview of your organizational structure?
What are the company's strengths and weaknesses compared to its competition?
How will my leadership responsibilities and performance be measured? By whom?
Could you describe your company's management style and the type of employee who fits well with it?
That's about all for today's episode, the second part in our 2-part series on first interviews. You've practiced responding to some typical interview questions, such as greatest achievement, strengths and weaknesses, and expected compensation. Also, you've learned some useful phrases for stating the cause of a problem and for asking whether your answer is sufficient. Finally, you looked at a lot of useful vocabulary and at some questions that you can ask an interviewer. Be sure to visit our website at www.businessenglishpod.com to sign up for our premium members service, and you can also download a free worksheet on useful words for describing your achievements and personal characteristics. Here at Business English Pod, we're busy leveraging over 40 years of business and training experience to bring you great podcasts so that you can practice your English on the go. See you again soon. Want to get more out of Business English Pod? Then go to www.businessenglishpod.com and sign up as a premium member. Premium members can access detailed study notes and the new Phrasecast to practice all the useful language we featured today. You're listening to Business English Pod, the business English podcast for professionals on the move. This is the first in a two-part series on discussing your previous experience in a job interview. It is one of a longer sequence of podcasts that will focus on the complete interview process. When you sit down to start a job interview, more than likely, you'll be a little nervous. Interviewers have a variety of techniques to get you to relax and to feel at ease. Usually, they'll make some small talk and generally try to lighten the atmosphere. One of the biggest mistakes you can make, however, is to interpret this friendliness as an invitation to be informal. Another reason interviewers try to get you to relax is to make you drop your defenses so they can see the real you. That's why successful job hunters will tell you, don't let your guard down. That is, don't lower all your defenses. That's the main message of this lesson. We'll be examining a bad example of what not to do. Since previous experience usually comes up at the beginning of an interview, we'll look at the casual discussion that takes place when an interview starts. Then, in the next episode, we'll hear a good example, and we'll focus more closely on further language for highlighting your experience. Let's turn to the listening. In this bad example, Alexander, who was recently graduated with a master's degree in philosophy, is being interviewed by Michael for a job as assistant manager at an electronics store. As you follow the dialogue, attempt to answer these questions. First, is everything Alex says clear and to the point? Second, does he seem overly friendly or informal at times? And finally, how does Alex account for the gap in his resume?
So, Alexander, have a seat. How are you doing today?
Well, to tell you the truth, it's been kind of a bad day.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yes. Well, it's raining. I don't really like rainy days.
I see. Right. So how about on a good day? What do you like to do in your spare time?
I like reading and watching TV.
Really? What's your favorite TV show?
Mr. Bean. He's so funny. Like the one with the Christmas turkey. Did you see that? He reminds me a lot of the people I meet here. British people are so funny, you know?
Yes, they can be. Okay, well, let's get down to business. Can you tell me a little about your previous experience?
Yes. My uncle managed a state-owned electronics company, and I helped him a lot as a kid. I would be perfect for this job.
That was in the Czech Republic.
That's right.
Okay, that sounds good.
Except back then, it was not like customer is king. Know what I mean?
Right. We always try to put the customer first.
Yeah, I was just kidding. Me too, of course.
Okay. I just saw a gap in your resume. 18 months. What were you doing?
I was finishing my master's thesis on Ladislav Klima, the Czech novelist and philosopher. It was the most important thing in the world for me, so I had to take some time out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, you know, and Klima is my hero. He only ever took on short-term work, so I wanted to see the world through his eyes.
Right, got that. So what do you consider to be your greatest accomplishment?
Thus far, Alex has done little to help his chances of getting his job and much to hurt them. Of course, none of us are likely to make all the mistakes Alexander has made, at least not all in the same interview. But We all have probably made at least some of these mistakes. So, his experience is quite useful to us in analyzing what can go wrong and how to avoid it. Now, let's go over the interview in detail and discuss how Alex could improve. How does the dialogue begin?
So, Alexander, have a seat. How are you doing today?
Well, to tell you the truth, it's been kind of a bad day.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Why don't we stop there for a second? Alex replies too honestly, too informally, to Michael's attempt at friendly small talk. How are you doing today is meant simply as a greeting. Therefore, Michael's reply that it's been a bad day is not really relevant. If anything, it will leave a bad impression on the interviewer. What are standard ways to respond to polite small talk at the beginning of the interview?
How are you doing today, Sam?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
The pleasure's all mine. I'm really looking forward to this opportunity to talk with you.
Did you have any trouble finding us?
No trouble at all, thank you. Your directions were very helpful.
What can I get you? Would you like a cup of tea or coffee?
Thank you. Actually, just a cup of water would be great, if it's not any trouble.
Of course, it's okay to show some style and humor. However, using standard responses, especially at the beginning of the interview, can help ensure everything gets off to a good start. Now, let's turn back to the dialogue.
So how about on a good day? What do you like to do in your spare time?
I like reading and watching TV.
Really? What's your favorite TV show?
Mr. Bean. He's so funny, like the one with the Christmas turkey. Did you see that? He reminds me a lot of the people I meet here. British people are so funny, you know?
Yes, they can be.
Alex is very talkative and seems to be saying anything that comes to mind. Again, although Alexander may be expressing his true opinion, he seems to be forgetting that he's in a job interview. By asking small talk questions, Michael is just trying to get Alexander to relax. But Alex seems to be going to the other extreme by letting his guard down too much. Though hobbies and personal background don't always come up at the beginning of the interview, like in this one, they'll probably become a topic of discussion at some point because your interviewer usually wants to get a picture of you as a whole person. Therefore, it's good to be prepared to discuss your leisure activities in a way that reflects positively on your overall character and professionalism. Let's listen to a few examples of suitable answers to such questions.
How about when you're not interviewing? What do you usually do on a Saturday?
Actually, I'm an avid golfer. It's a great way to get some fresh air and meet people.
Surely you're not working all of the time.
Oh, of course not. I do enjoy blowing off some steam in the gym, and I participate in intramural sports on the weekends.
What kind of leisure activities do you prefer?
Well, like most people, I enjoy movies and music, but I'm also a big fan of books.
Words like avid, big fan of, enjoy, and enthusiastic about can help give interviewers a positive impression of a well-rounded, passionate individual. Blow off steam means to relieve tension and stress. Intramural refers to activities, usually sports, between groups at a college or university. So far, Michael, the interviewer, has attempted to create a good atmosphere with some casual discussion. Now, he asks the first actual question about Alex's work history.
Okay, well, let's get down to business. Can you tell me a little about your previous experience?
Yes. My uncle managed a state-owned electronics company, and I helped him a lot as a kid. I would be perfect for this job.
That was in the Czech Republic.
That's right.
Okay, that sounds good.
Except back then, it was not like customer is king. Know what I mean?
Right. We always try to put the customer first.
Yeah, I was just kidding. Me too, of course.
Because it casts doubt on Alexander's attitude towards basic principles of professional behavior, this attempt at humor is likely to work against him. It's okay to make jokes, but instead of drawing attention to your weaknesses, they should reflect well on your personality and highlight your strengths. We should focus on the positive aspects of our experience and attempt to portray it in a way that emphasizes the benefit to the employer. This is a good tip for anyone, but it's especially important for someone with little actual work experience, like Alex. What would have been a better way for him to respond?
I have a good understanding of this type of business, gained through years of experience.
I've got a lot of hands-on experience in retail management.
I've always been interested in electronics.
I have a strong willingness and drive to learn.
Okay, I just saw a gap in your resume. 18 months. What were you doing?
I was finishing my master's thesis on Ladislav Klima, the Czech novelist and philosopher. It was the most important thing in the world for me, so I had to take some time out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, and Klima is my hero. He only ever took on short-term work, so I wanted to see the world through his eyes.
Right, got that.
Having completed a master's thesis is no small accomplishment. With a little thought, it would have been very easy for Alexander to use this success to emphasize positive aspects of his character and work ethic. Instead, Alex gets sidetracked by mistaking the interview for an academic discussion. In Part 2 of Previous Experience, we'll look in more detail at dealing with gaps in your resume by emphasizing the positive. Now, we'll just focus briefly on portraying academic experience to employers. How can you highlight useful skills that you have gained during your studies?
Besides the theoretical knowledge I've gained, I've also learned a lot of practical skills.
Through writing my thesis, I've learned about how to be rigorous, how to work in a team, and how to operate under tight deadline pressures.
Working part-time while going to university has taught me a lot about time management and balancing priorities.
Okay, let's practice some of the things we've learned today. First, we'll focus on two common small talk exchanges that can occur at the beginning of an interview. In a series of two short dialogues, you'll be asked questions by your interviewer. Respond after the beeps. Remember to keep your responses brief and to the point. Don't let your guard down.
How are you doing today? Great, thanks. Did you have any trouble finding us?
Please have a seat. Would you like a glass of water? So, what do you think of our office?
How did that go? Were you able to come up with some brief but polite responses? Let's hear some example answers. Keep in mind, of course, that there are many possible variations. The important thing is to respond appropriately.
How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Great, thanks. Did you have any trouble finding us?
No trouble at all, thank you.
Please have a seat. Would you like a glass of water?
Yes, thank you. That's very kind.
So, what do you think of our office?
From what I've seen so far, I like it a lot.
Another great way to practice is to write out dialogues or role play them with friends. Now, in the second practice, let's review some of the collocations or word partnerships that we learned today with a technique called gap reading. You'll hear a series of sentences. One word in each sentence is blanked out with a. Repeat the sentence, but say the missing word. For example, if you hear, "I've always been in electronics," you'll say, "I've always been interested in electronics." Let's begin.
Working part-time while going to university has taught me a lot about management and priorities. Answer. Working part-time while going to university has taught me a lot about time management and balancing priorities.
Besides the theoretical knowledge I've gained, I've also learned a lot of skills. Answer. Besides the theoretical knowledge I've gained, I've also learned a lot of practical skills.
I have a strong willingness and to learn. Answer. I have a strong willingness and drive to learn.
I have a lot of experience in retail management. Answer. I have a lot of hands-on experience in retail management.
To build your memory, it's good to go back and try the practice again. After a couple times, I'm sure you'll be able to use all this great, vivid language for discussing your interests and work history with fluency and confidence. In this lesson, we've examined the do's and the don'ts for the beginning of a job interview under the theme, "Don't Let Your Guard Down." And we've learned that thinking about how to portray your previous experience is an important part of the preparation work that we should do before an interview begins. Along with weaknesses, strengths, and accomplishments, which we'll be dealing with in later episodes, your past work life is almost certain to be a topic of discussion. As we've seen, even if you're a student, you can use your university experience to draw attention to your advantages as an employee. In part 2 of previous experience, we'll hear a good example of a successful response, and we'll focus on specific language and strategies for highlighting experience and for turning weaknesses into strengths. You're listening to Business English Pod, the business English podcast for professionals on the move. This is the second in a 2-part series on discussing previous experience in job interviews. It's one of an ongoing sequence of podcasts that covers the whole interview process. In the first part of this series, we examined a bad example of everything that can go wrong when we talk about our previous experience. We used the theme, "Don't Let Your Guard Down," to highlight the importance of maintaining an appropriate level of formality and professionalism, even when the interviewer is attempting to strike a casual tone. In part 2 today, we listened to a better interview performance by someone who was prepared to talk about their previous experience more effectively. In this good example, Sherry Shen from Hong Kong is interviewing with a multinational accounting company for her first job after graduating with a master's degree in finance. It's her first round of interviews, and she's being asked all the standard questions by an HR officer. Although Sherry is an all-around good candidate, her resume has some problems. Her grades aren't great, and there is a gap with no employment between her college and graduate school careers. As you listen, focus on the following questions. First, does Sherry let her guard down, or does she answer briefly and to the point with an appropriate level of formality? Second, does Sherry seem well prepared to talk about her experience? And finally, how does Sherry account for the gap in her resume?
So, Sherry, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Not bad, thanks. Did you find us okay?
Yes, no problem. Your directions were spot on.
Great, because it can be a little tricky getting here by MTR. All right. Well, let's get started. Perhaps you can begin by telling me a little about your previous experience.
Of course. In my coursework and internships, I've had extensive experience in both the theoretical and practical aspects of accounting, and I excel in both areas.
Really? Can you give me some examples?
Well, I've taken 2 advanced applied mathematics courses on risk analysis. They were very challenging, but I managed to get in the top 10% of both classes.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, in our more hands-on courses, I've also become familiar with many of the leading software packages, particularly the at-risk suite for Excel and ACL for audit analysis.
That's good. We use at-risk for analysis here too.
And in my internship last year at Armstrong Associates, I got to apply these analytical skills. I worked on an audit of a Fortune 500 company.
Yes, I saw that on your resume. So, in what ways did you benefit from this experience?
Well, though as an intern my responsibilities were limited, this was a great opportunity to participate in a team effort and to learn practical knowledge about how to face clients.
Great. Now, can you tell me about this gap in your resume? It looks like you took 2 years out between college and graduate school.
Yes, actually. I had a baby in 2003, a little girl. It was very important to me that she had a good start in life, so I took 2 years out after she was born. My family helps me take care of her, but it's taught me a lot about time management.
I bet. Children can be a handful.
Indeed, but it certainly made me mature faster than most of my classmates, and despite these extra challenges, or perhaps even because of them, I have had quite a successful grad school career. I'm always working hard to do my best, so I'm confident I'll continue to succeed in the future.
Sherry is off to a good start in the interview. She maintains a proper level of formality in her replies, even when the interviewer tries to set her at ease with some chit-chat at the beginning. Also, Sherry's prepared to discuss her experience. Even though she has no real work record, she can still talk convincingly about how achieving university successes and overcoming life challenges make her a strong candidate. First, let's review how Sherry handles the small talk at the beginning of the dialogue.
So, Sherry, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Not bad, thanks. Did you find us okay?
Yes, no problem. Your directions were spot on.
Great, because it can be a little tricky getting here by MTR.
Sherry keeps her responses polite, brief, and to the point. In your interview, there may well be more small talk than there was in this one, which is fine. Just be sure to remember that it's an interview, and aside from a few polite questions, let the interviewer lead the exchange. What happens next?
Perhaps you can begin by telling me a little about your previous experience.
Of course. In my coursework and internships, I've had extensive experience in both the theoretical and practical aspects of accounting, and I excel in both areas.
Really? Can you give me some examples?
Sherry is obviously prepared well for this interview. She does a great job of summing up her university experience and, more importantly, of talking about how it translates into benefits to her future employer. She uses the present perfect tense, have done, to highlight that her experience is relevant now. She employs positive, active language, such as excel, and she makes good use of word partnerships, such as extensive experience. Critically, she backs up what she says with examples. Let's listen to more.
Well, I've taken 2 advanced applied mathematics courses on risk analysis. They were very challenging, but I managed to get in the top 10% of both classes. But at the same time, in our more hands-on courses, I've also become familiar with many of the leading software packages, particularly the at-risk suite for Excel and ACL for audit analysis.
That's good. We use at-risk for analysis here too.
Notice how Sherry quantifies, that is, uses numbers where possible by, for instance, saying she scored in the top 10% of her class, and how she uses strong, vivid words in her description, advanced, challenging, and hands-on to describe her experience. Here's a few more examples of some key words you can use to highlight your experience.
I was mainly responsible for implementing new accounting procedures, which succeeded in reducing our tax burden by 15%.
I see my role as manager as a facilitator for change, to be supportive of my staff's needs and to make sure they have the tools to adapt to the changing marketplace.
By participating in the university debate team, I've been able to develop both my communication and leadership skills.
Over the past year, I have succeeded in rolling out an innovative new system for measuring productivity. It was a challenge, but it really paid off with an 18% increase in customer satisfaction.
Now, let's go back to the dialogue. Listen to how Sherry talks about a specific case in which she applied her university experience in the real world.
And in my internship last year at Armstrong Associates, I got to apply these analytical skills. I worked on an audit of a Fortune 500 company.
Yes, I saw that on your resume. So, in what ways did you benefit from this experience?
Well, though as an intern my responsibilities were limited, this was a great opportunity to participate in a team effort and to learn practical knowledge about how to face clients.
Sherry puts the negative information, the fact that as an intern her responsibilities were limited, inside a subordinate clause. Although my responsibilities were limited, this was a great opportunity to learn. Thus, the emphasis of this statement is on what she learned and on what a great opportunity it was for her. Also, she's careful to underline how her previous work has demonstrated the positive personal qualities of teamwork and cooperation. When we're asked about our previous experience, in addition to talking about our qualifications, it's important to mention positive personal characteristics. Listen to another example from someone interviewing for a management position.
Although this industry is different, I think my experience as a team leader demonstrates a lot of management skills that fit well with this job. Specifically, my ability to listen, to be flexible, and innovative in my approach.
We'll be studying many more positive personal characteristics that you can mention in the next series on job interviews, talking about your accomplishments. Finally, let's have a look at how Sherry deals with the question about the gap in her resume.
Great. Now, can you tell me about this gap in your resume? It looks like you took 2 years out between college and graduate school.
Yes, actually. I had a baby in 2003, a little girl. It was very important to me that she had a good start in life, so I took 2 years out after she was born. My family helps me take care of her, but it's taught me a lot about time management.
I bet. Children can be a handful.
Indeed, but it certainly made me mature faster than most of my classmates, and despite these extra challenges, or perhaps even because of them, I have had quite a successful grad school career. I'm always working hard to do my best, so I'm confident I'll continue to succeed in the future.
Although the gap in her career record is a weakness, Sherry does her best to turn it into a strength. Instead of focusing on her personal challenge, she attempts to look at it from the point of view of the employer. How does her history, even when it doesn't fit a traditional career pattern, translate into benefits to the employer? Sherry focuses on how her experience as a mother has taught her time management and maturity. Before your job interview, examine every gap in your work history and every weakness on your resume. Nobody's perfect, but usually every coin has two sides. What are the lessons, strengths, or positive experience that you have drawn from your frustrations? Let's look at more examples of turning weaknesses into strengths.
One good thing that has come out of my time out is catching up on a lot of training and reading for my work.
Taking care of my mother during her illness reinforced my commitment to help people.
I had to take time out for health reasons, but it gave me a chance to reevaluate my goals.
I emerged from the experience with a new sense of direction.
I volunteered to help small businesses with their taxes, which has given me a deeper perspective on dealing with SMEs.
Now, let's finish off today with a little practice on the two key skills we looked at: highlighting your experience and portraying weaknesses in a positive light. First, we'll practice talking about your experience. Let's use gap reading to review key collocations, word partnerships that can help make your discussion fluent, vivid, and strong. In the cues for this practice, you'll hear a series of sentences. One word in each sentence is blanked out with a beep. Repeat the sentence, but say the missing word. For example, if you hear, "I was mainly responsible for new accounting procedures," you'll say, "I was mainly responsible for implementing new accounting procedures." Note that in some cases, more than one correct answer is possible.
As a manager, I see my role as a for change. Answer. As a manager, I see my role as a facilitator for change.
I work hard to make sure my staff have the to adapt to the changing marketplace. Answer. I work hard to make sure my staff have the tools to adapt to the changing marketplace.
By participating in the university debate team, I've been able to both my communication and leadership skills. Answer. By participating in the university debate team, I've been able to develop both my communication and leadership skills.
Over the past year, I have succeeded in out an innovative new system for measuring productivity. Answer. Over the past year, I have succeeded in rolling out an innovative new system for measuring productivity.
It was a challenge, but it really, with an 18% increase in customer satisfaction. Answer. It was a challenge, but it really paid off with an 18% increase in customer satisfaction.
Next, it's time to practice turning weaknesses into strengths. Imagine you're discussing gaps in your resume with an interviewer. In the cues, you'll hear the reason for your gap, followed by a benefit to you and your potential employer. Form a sentence in which you link the gap to the benefit. You can use language we've studied today, such as, "Every cloud has a silver lining," or "I emerge from the experience with," or "One good thing that has come out of it is," and so on. Are you ready?
Unemployed. Took classes in new software.
Took time out for health reasons. Enabled me to re-evaluate my goals.
Listen now to some example phrases. Bear in mind that your answers may be different.
One good thing that has come out of being unemployed is that I've had an opportunity to take classes in new software.
I had to take time out for health reasons, but every cloud has a silver lining. It really enabled me to reevaluate my goals.
That's all for this series on previous experience. We've looked at how to deal with the small talk that accompanies the beginning of almost every job interview, and we've examined how to prepare yourself to respond to typical questions about your previous experience. We've particularly emphasized strong, vivid language and turning weaknesses into strengths.